Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. How are we? I hope we're having a really good week so far. Today, I'm going to attempt to cover a pretty meaty topic. And it's really around all of the habits that I consider non-negotiables, not only for getting in shape, improving your body composition, but also staying there. I think there can often be so much dialogue about the perfect macronutrient split, the perfect workout routine, like all of these hyper specific things that I think often means that people forget about the big rocks, the things that no one is arguing about, the things that make this easy without you needing to micromanage every single thing that you do in your daily life. I'm going to try to make this as succinct as possible. And we're obviously going to be covering nutrition, but also things around mindset and key habits that, in my experience, most people who get good results and who are able to maintain those results, these are the things that they actually apply to their life. We're going to start with the big one where I think most people struggle, understandably, and that is nutrition. We're not talking today at all about specific calorie goals or protein targets or any of that stuff. None of the specifics. I genuinely believe for most people, implementing at least a handful or ideally all of these things will already make a measurable impact as to how well you're approaching your nutrition. And the good news is you don't even need to think about tracking at this point. These are just principles, guidelines that you can apply, super easy, super straightforward. The first one is around how we approach hunger and appetite. So I like to live by a rule of rarely starving, rarely stuffed. And this is something I talk about inside coaching all the time. We can start tuning in to our internal hunger and fullness scale. You'll see lots of different variations of this, but essentially we're trying to rate our hunger and be in tune with where we are on that scale a lot of the time. Now, this is something that you do have to practice if you have zero experience of ever really asking yourself in a curious manner, how hungry am I right now? How full or satisfied am I right now? Equally, if you've spent years actively ignoring hunger cues, you have a history of chronic dieting, perhaps you even come from an eating disorder background, it's incredibly hard initially to tune in to that internal hunger and fullness scale, to trust what it is saying. Equally, on the other end, if you're in a position where you have actively ignored those kind of signals of fullness for a long period of time, again, it can make that quite tricky to initially tune in and trust that response. It's not something that everyone can do from day one, but it is something like any skill that you will get better at over time. The more you pay attention to it, the more you try to acknowledge it and act upon it. When we think about the hunger scale and that concept of rarely starving, rarely stuffed, we ideally want to be sitting in what I call the sweet spot, which is between, say, 3 and 7. Definitely normal and expected to be sitting somewhere around that 3 mark before you sit down and have your meal. It's dinner time, right? You're about to sit down and have your dinner. Definitely normal for you to be hungry, ready for that meal. Maybe a little bit of stomach growling, noticing some hunger, moderate hunger. What we don't want is to spend too much time down that bottom end of your hunger scale between, say, 1 and 2, okay? Now, ironically, the more time you spend in that kind of 1 to 2 region, the more likely you are to spend more time in that upper end of your hunger scale, feeling uncomfortably full. If you're going 7-8 hours without eating, turn up to your next meal at a 1, it is going to be incredibly hard for you to intuitively listen in to that satisfaction, finish up at a 7 without overdoing it. It's a completely normal response to being extremely hungry that you will then often eat more than you need. So wherever possible, we stick to that middle ground. Next, my favorite nutrition framework ever, PCC, protein, carbs, and color. With most of our meals, particularly our main meals, we're wanting to prioritize all 3 of those elements: a protein source, a carb source, and a source of color, which is essentially fruit, veg, salad. Now, not only is this a pretty solid approach for health and general wellness, and therefore body composition, but it also just removes the insane amount of decision fatigue that we experience on a day-to-day basis with the millions of recipe inspiration ideas, meal prep videos. You could quite literally cook a brand new meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day until the day you die and never eat the same thing ever. Because we have that much information at our fingertips. That can absolutely be a great thing if you're thinking about something fancy to cook on a Saturday date night, but not so great if you're dealing with complete overwhelm and you just want to simplify the approach that you take to your nutrition. This can also help with things like grocery shopping, right? When you know most meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I need a source of protein, a source of carbs, a source of color. Makes it a hell of a lot easier to figure out what you actually need to get in your fridge, in your cupboard, for you to actually execute against that. Prime example, I'm halfway through my breakfast, but inspiration took me. I thought I'd hit record instead. We have oats, carbs. We have protein in the form of protein powder and some yogurt. We also have some color. We have raspberries in here. Simple. I'm following that PCC framework. The next one kind of links to that hunger scale sweet spot that we're talking about, and that is keeping meal timings pretty consistent. Now, this is not going to be something that every single person can do. Just take what you need from this video. You might not be able to apply all of them, but take the ones that you think are going to work for your life. If you are a shift worker and your shift patterns change all the time, it's unrealistic for me to say, eat your breakfast at the same time every day, eat your lunch at the same time every day. Equally, you're a new parent, right? Your kids are not sleeping through the night. So you're often up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you might be having your breakfast at 3 a.m., right? Take what you need, but the more we can make our meal timings roughly consistent, the easier the entire process of dealing with nutrition is. It also helps you to stay in that sweet spot that I was talking about, that hunger scale sweet spot. When you regulate the rough timings at which you are eating your meals, your hunger, your appetite starts to come in line with that regularity. Our bodies like consistency. They like predictability. For me, because most of my days look pretty much the same, I get up, I do some form of movement, I get to work, I go to bed, I can often think about keeping my meals pretty similar every day in terms of timings. I might have my breakfast around 8, 9 o'clock, my lunch at say 12, I'll have an afternoon snack at around 3, 4 o'clock, I'll have my dinner around 7. That for me is by and large the same structure every day. If you do nothing else with your nutrition other than those things, I guarantee everything will start to feel a lot easier. And then when it comes time to diet, if that's something on your roadmap, it is so much easier to do so from a place of structure than a place of absolute chaos. Moving on to mindset. This is something that I actually think affects way more people than we recognize, and you may not even be aware as to whether it's supporting you or sabotaging you, right? This is something I really want you to take seriously when it comes to any kind of fitness journey, but frankly, I think this bleeds into every part of life. How are we looking at our behaviors? Are we looking at them through a lens of criticism, constant self-deprecation, or are we looking at them through a curious lens? Rather than going, oh my God, I am so frustrated with myself. Why am I hungry again? I've literally just had my lunch. I cannot be hungry again. I'm so greedy. I'm the problem. Or you could go, that's really interesting. I wonder why I'm hungry right now. What did I eat before? How long ago was that? What did it look like? Was it low in protein, low in volume overall? Did I rush it, right? Was I trying to eat this meal as quickly as physically possible whilst doing 100 other things? Am I just generally underfueled, which is why I'm noticing that hunger? Ask better questions. Better questions give you better answers. We can't talk about mindset without talking about the all or nothing cycle. You'll have probably heard a few analogies about the all or nothing mindset, right? You're driving along in the car, you get a blowout in one of your tires. What do? Do you fix the blowout or do you slash the other 3, right? You're on the tube, you miss your stop. You carry on to the end of the line because fuck it, or do you just get off at the next stop and make your way back, right? The same exact mindset that you would take to those types of situations should be applied to your general health and fitness journey. You miss a gym session, you go out and overeat. Everyone on planet Earth overeats at some point. Christmas Day dinner, you go to a wedding, you have a birthday party, whatever. There are always going to be instances where things aren't quote unquote perfect. And it's so cliche at this point, but it's cliche for a reason. You are a product. Your results are a product of what you do most of the time. Okay? You falling off or having a wobble or having an imperfect day, if that leads to you spiraling, self-sabotaging, making decisions again and again and again that are not goal aligned, then that is the number one thing that I want you to fix before doing anything else. That is the thing you need to be paying the most attention to. So something happens, it's not particularly goal aligned, whatever that may be. How can you make the next best decision? That is the only question that you need to answer and execute on. If you do that, you will continue to make progress. If you don't, you are going to be stuck. And a little planning goes a long way. I'm quite a type A personality. I like things to be just so. I like organization. I like structure. I like goals. I like to tick those things off, all of that, right? That's quite natural to my personality. But I will say, being somewhat organized is not a personality trait. It is learnable. It is a skill that you can learn and you can implement to a degree. Something that I will do at the end of each week, and I'm certainly not suggesting that you need to do this, but I'll open up my digital calendar, which for me is a no-brainer. I have to be able to see what I'm doing in digital form. I can easily edit, etc. I'll plan in, obviously, my work blocks. What's happening work-wise, top priority, what do I need to get done next week? How long is that going to take me? I'll give myself a finite amount of time to complete that task. I'll also be scheduling in my movement, the next most important thing. When am I getting to the gym? What days am I just not going to be able to get to the gym? Fine. I'm not chastising myself because of that. I'm just deciding it's not a priority that day, but I can get it done here and I can get it done here. Now, depending on how busy I am, I genuinely might even plan in breaks for eating, literally time to eat. If I know I'm absolutely slammed, I will do that. I'll also plan in, again, if I'm on that busier end of things, I'll plan in times to cook. When am I going to cook? When am I possibly going to get any kind of nutrients into my body this week without just relying on Deliveroo? You don't need that degree of planning, but you do need some organization, a little bit of thinking ahead. That's how you turn that, I hope I get to the gym this week, into I'm getting to the gym this week. Without any level of pre-planning or organization, I just feel you are too open. There are just too many reasons why those gym sessions that you were hoping for or that meal prep you were hoping to do may not happen. Too many obstacles that could crop up along the way and take priority instead. And when we think about our movement, really the number one thing here that makes the biggest difference, it's not even strength training. For once, I'm not banging on about that being the most important thing in the world. It's just having no 0 days. Again, obviously I'm not talking about if you're ill or you're injured, but as long as you're fit and well, then no 0 days is a really good way to make your overall approach to getting in shape, staying in shape, and just generally being healthy in a better place. I'm not saying you need to go to the gym every day. In fact, I would strongly advise you don't do that. But a short walk, at a minimum, every single day, some form of movement. Maybe it's a stretching sequence, maybe it's some mobility, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's Pilates. I don't care what it is. Just make sure that your movement floor never drops to absolutely nothing. Then when we think about that general movement piece, not even touching on the gym at this point, try to set yourself a bit of a baseline in terms of what movement you're going to be getting in on a daily basis. No 0 days, but what on a normal day for you can you averagely get done with the time and capacity that you have? Could you reach for 6,000 steps every day, for example? This is honestly more important than most people give it credit for. If you think about training 3 times a week, right? Let's say you're spending 3 hours a week at the gym. What do you think makes the biggest difference? The 3 hours in the gym or the other 165 hours and what you do with those? Spoiler, it's the second one, especially when we're thinking about fat loss, okay? If that is a goal, set your baseline and find ways to get that movement in. It doesn't necessarily have to be you leaving the house and walking until you hit 6,000 steps. Get creative with this. Do you need to go to the supermarket today? Do you need to drive there? Okay, could you walk there? No, you need to drive? Fine. Could you park in the furthest away car parking space in the supermarket? Could you go for a 10-minute walk once you finished your lunch? Could you get off the bus a stop earlier and walk the rest of the way? Find ways to move. Think about what you are already doing in your day. Is there any way that in between those tasks that you know you have to do, you could implement some walking? Look, I'm not giving any groundbreaking advice here, okay? It really are simple things. I'm not saying that any of them are inherently easy. It is absolutely going to depend on individual context, of course, in the context of your life and your history, your experience, as to what sound viable to you. But I would go as far to say over 80% of people that I work with initially could do with tidying up one or more of those things that I have just mentioned before looking at doing anything more specific, before working towards a calorie goal, before thinking about protein targets or specific macro splits, before adding in any supplements, before doing anything really hyper specific for recovery, right? Just getting the big rocks in the right place is going to have the biggest bang for its buck. And the amazing news is basically all of those things, besides your bill from your supermarket after buying food for the week, they're free. They are free and they have the biggest impact. And when I'm talking to people who have made amazing progress and who continue to maintain said progress for years and years and years to come, I can guarantee they are doing pretty much all of the things that I have just mentioned. I really hope that's helpful. As always, questions in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. I'm going to get back to my breakfast now. Love you. Bye.